Maybe you don't know.
This time to build. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build power.
What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Chris Hampton. Welcome to episode 238 of the Power Company Podcast, brought to you by PowerCompanyClimbing.com. I am here in Lander, Wyoming, as usual, and we just wrapped up the International Climbers Festival, which was a great time. Already looking forward to next year. Nate has been in town where we've been getting a lot of work done, a lot of climbing sessions, of course, board meetings, more of those coming for sure. And we've also been working on a course, a movement course for beginners that'll be out sometime later this year. So if you're not a Power Company Climbing Academy member, if you're not signed up for that email list, you can do that right there in the show notes in your pocket supercomputer and be the first to know when that movement course is dropping. So go do that now. I'll wait. Another thing this summer has brought is a return to the ability to sit down face-to-face with people and have these in-depth discussions that started this whole thing and that, frankly, as I've mentioned before, I'm really addicted to. And one of my favorite parts of that, of doing this podcast in general, has been listening to the feedback from people, getting suggestions and recommendations from people who are suggesting climbers that I may not know or may not have even heard of. These people that are sort of hidden away and aren't announcing all the things they're doing. And then I follow those people a little bit. And then I just out of the blue ask if we can sit down, have a conversation. And I personally prefer to not have a bunch of conversations prior. I much more prefer learning it all in real time so that you're getting to hear my curiosity as a listener to this person. And today's episode is one of those instances. I had read some of Blake's work prior and had never met her and never gotten to sit down and talk with her. And we met very briefly and I just said, hey, can we have a conversation? And we sat down, and what you're hearing is actually our very first conversation that was for more than maybe 2 or 3 minutes. So this is one of the things I absolutely love about doing this podcast. Blake Cason is today's guest. She is a climber and great conversationalist who holds a master's degree in health behavior and education. She's the founder of Pivot Wellness, where she's available for integrative wellness and life coaching, and she's an expert in habit setting. She's also one of the founders of ClimbWell, a retreat dedicated to the intersection of rock climbing, wellness, and intentional life design. They've got a retreat coming up in Rifle in September that is open for registration. You'll hear more about it at the end of this episode, and you'll also get access to a code for 10% off if you're interested in joining that retreat. It's actually something I wish had been available when I was really starting to dig into my own climbing performance, because I think it is a really valuable resource. All right, let's get into it.
Maybe you don't know.
This time.
To me, there's always metaphors to rock climbing. One of the reasons I love rock climbing is it's taught me so much about myself and about the world around me. We are on the rock in the same way we are in the rest of our lives.
This time, power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to
so many aspects of how to improve your climbing
Yeah.
that aren't directly tied to just going climbing.
Totally.
And that's something Nate and I, the whole company, kind of struggles with is the wrong word, but like we're constantly turning it over in our hands and trying to figure out the best way to say, maybe physical training isn't the thing you need.
Yeah.
You know? Maybe there's something else.
Yeah. And how to discern that case by case
Right.
is really interesting. And it takes at least in my experience as a coach, really takes a type of presence, like, mental, physical presence with a person that I'm talking with to feel into like, what's their equation that they're working with and what might need to be added or subtracted.
Right.
Yeah.
And that subtracted part is really important too.
Yeah,
because
totally.
a lot of people come into this, this desire to get better at climbing and are immediately like, what do I need to add to what I'm already doing?
Right.
And the subtraction idea doesn't often happen first.
For sure. Yeah. I talk to clients sometimes about add reduce, like the add reduce model. Like what, and I often put it to them, like, here's this concept of like when we want things to shift. What's your sense, knowing, because we're in some ways our best experts, and sometimes often we have blind spots. That's why we go to somebody else. But like starting with them, putting them in the seat of the expert, what do you think might be helpful to add? And if people are honest with themselves and take a moment, they're like, maybe this. Okay, cool. What might you need to reduce? Not take it away, not like eradicate it and avoid it at all costs, but like what might you want to like, tone down on? And given the space to explore, often they come up with something too, which is that's definitely one of the things. And I wonder if you have this with your coaching as well. Definitely one of the things I really love about the approach to coaching that I get to have is watching people see themselves and kind of be honest with themselves in ways that they haven't before is like, oh God, it's so inspiring.
Yeah, it's so important to get people to be honest with themselves.
Yeah.
It's one thing for you as a coach to tell them a thing, but it's going to click in a much more important way if you can help lead them into that answer, whatever it is, even if you don't know the answer. Leading them into it is
leading
huge.
them into the awareness that they're asking for. Like they're often coming. I'm a wellness and life coach, so it's pretty broad, and I think even with climbing, it's quite broad. We're still humans are so complex. Yeah, but like they're coming looking for that shift. They're looking for support. Sometimes they're looking to be told what to do, which is its own, for me, my own experience of, okay, I hear that. I hear you want me to tell you what to do. That's not my job to tell somebody what to do. I'm here to create this container for you to understand yourself. And if I see room for a suggestion, I'm definitely going to give it to you. But for me, the approach to life coaching that I use, it's very, very minimal advice. I might reflect something back to somebody. I might make a suggestion, but they're always the expert on their experience, which is different than the training field, and something I've been really curious of. Or would you find it? Did you see that
to a
different?
Degree? Yes, I think there are some physical things we need to address with many climbers. Yeah, but a lot of them, the physical training part is really simple. Yeah, most of them need basics. Most of us need basics. Where I see most people falter is either in, including myself, is either in tactics or bad habits that just don't lead to them setting themselves up for success. Sure. Mindset, and there's so many things that go into performing well. And to be totally frank, I love the physical training side of it, but if that's all I was going to focus on, I would be bored out of my mind because it's really so damn simple. Yeah, for sure. And performing well, so much of performing well are other things that they have to focus on. Yeah, it's like one spoke in a wheel of that. Yeah. That is really complex and different for all of us, and
Yeah, I think when we as coaches or mentors or trainers can be present to that this is a human being. This isn't just like their, max hang, like these numbers.
Right.
And that even,
Right.
as a wellness coach, something I've grappled with, and as a nutritionist, of like things like people focusing on their weight, their macros, their BMI, things like that. Like when we reduce anything to a handful of numbers, like how could we possibly see the whole picture?
Right.
And I think that's often what we as individuals balk at, and we're just like, oh, I don't even know where to start. I need somebody to help me, and finding that person that can be present, is experienced enough in their field, experienced enough in what you're going to them to, so that they can like really hold a bigger picture. And in some ways, the phrase that I use a lot is like kind of hold it down for this person while they clarify, build awareness around their performance, their mindset, their relationship with their body, whatever it is, like really hold it down and hold a container while they parse through that. It's pretty cool. And I think that's like, to me, that's the sanctity of the work that I do. And I think the sanctity of coaching and training in general is like, you're working with somebody that's trying to better themselves, trying to express themselves to their fullest capacity. Like how fucking spectacular. How cool.
Yeah. I love that image you just put into my head. My wife, Annalisa, and many of her friends love to shop, love to dig through boxes filled with old clothes.
Yeah.
And, there's a guy they go to in Riverton who pretty much nobody else knows about. So they have this pick of this enormous warehouse filled with vintage clothes, and they go through there and dig through all these boxes. And I love the idea of holding this container for someone while they dig through and find the things that are important to them.
Yeah.
And you help guide them a little bit. How do you deal with, because I'm sure you encounter this the same as we do, the people who come to you really looking for answers.
Yeah.
And it's I want to give them some semblance of what they want, but I also know that it's more important for me to ask them questions and to have them find the answers.
Yeah.
Whether I know the answer or not,
Sure.
I want them to find it for themselves. How do you deal with that?
Yeah. That's been definitely a learning curve for me personally as a coach.
Yeah, same.
I came into coaching knowing that like my opinions were not important. And over time that has come to a place that like trying to understand like, okay, well, what does that mean? Like, because I can still have thoughts and ideas and like a sense. And so what do I do with those? And so for me, coaching is like a pretty whole Blake experience. Like I'm listening with my ears, I'm listening with my body, I'm listening for things between what they're saying. I'm making connections, and through that, when I have a sense that they're really wanting me to give them the answers, or they're saying like, "What would you do?" There are times when somebody asks me like, "What would you do? What should I do?" And I have a really strong felt sense that they've exhausted their resources. Like they're at the end of their awareness, their understanding, their internal and external resources, they're at the end of them. And in those times, I would probably make a suggestion. And even if it's something simple, but it's coming from a felt sense of like, well, I'm seeing this bigger picture because I'm not emotionally wrapped up in their experience like they are.
Right.
So I can hold this zoomed out view. And so either I'll make a suggestion, or sometimes I feel like they've exhausted their resources, and then I might just ask them like a really broad question, like, what do you need? You're asking me what you should do, and we can get to that, but I'm also curious, what do you need right now? Like, do you need a minute? Are you feeling overwhelmed? Whatever it is. But then sometimes I get a sense when they ask for me to tell them what to do, or they're coming to coaching with that perspective that that's what I do, is I tell them I just like, give them a plan and I'm like, do X, Y, and
Right.
Z and you'll be happy.
Here's your life outline.
Exactly.
Do this.
Which is way too much pressure. Like
Yeah.
I can't even imagine doing
Right.
that for somebody. And that's why it's like they're the owners of their lives. So, continuing to remind them, act like that they are the owners. But also sometimes I will, try to, because sometimes when we get to that point of, I don't know, what would you do? Like maybe we haven't exhausted our resources. We're just like really zoomed in. We're like narrowed. Our brain isn't, we're, in our limbic system, like our emotional center, we're in our amygdala, like we're totally overwhelmed. And so often in those cases, when I feel like they're just overwhelmed and they're not in their like prefrontal cortex, higher functioning part of their brain, I'll ask them a question that really zooms things out, or like bring in a little bit of lightness, like crack a joke, or like something to kind of, and sometimes it feels like breaking the spell of that like narrowed focus, downward spiral, I don't know, you tell me, kind of disconnected from themselves.
Sure.
Feeling, if that's what I'm sensing from them, of like they haven't quite exhausted their resources, that they're just closed off to them. Like they have more resources, but they're too narrowed, too overwhelmed to touch them in that moment.
Mm-hmm. I feel like, when you're talking about them getting overwhelmed and not knowing where to go next, or exhausting their resources, that feels like to me, and I see this happen while people are physically climbing as well.
Oh, 100%.
Where when they're overwhelmed, they become 100% reactive and not proactive at all.
Sure.
There's no plan forward. It's just, I'm going to grab this hold. It feels horrible. That freaks me out. I'm just going to drop off, you know? And there's all this reaction that happens, and it spirals into this negative place a lot of the time.
Yeah, definitely.
We see it happen while we're watching a climber, and it certainly happens in life too.
Yeah, definitely.
One of the things that people often assume is my job as a coach is like to give them the beta they need, to do a thing. And oftentimes, even if I know the beta, even if I've done the boulder or done the route, or I can see the beta clearly, but they haven't developed their skills enough to be able to see the solution I can see, I'll say, I really don't know. Maybe I would try this. Yeah. And I'll give them a different solution, one that I even know may not work, and frame it as this exploration of, let's see how things feel. And then let's judge what our next step is based off of planning ahead for this step.
Right.
And I think that tends to break people out of the, I'm just here to get an answer.
Right.
It's more like, this is a mutual exploration of how to improve or how to succeed or whatever it is they're looking for.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's definitely I think a misnomer that it is just as helpful for us to be given the answer as it is to find on our own, and it's really not true. Like the very, you like knowing the beta, quote unquote, on whatever it is, me knowing the beta on somebody's like life coaching thing. It's not just like this single pointed thing that we downloaded from the universe, it was a lot.
I wish it worked that way sometimes.
Right. And we could just pass our downloads on to other people and they'd be totally fine. Like that's something in the future that we'll be doing as coaches. Yeah. But like, people talk a lot about intuition, and for some folks that can be like a kind of gauzy, vague, woo-woo term about intuition. But I like to remind folks, at least a perspective, I'll offer this as an alternative perspective to the gauzy, woo-woo connotations of intuition, is that it's data-driven.
Totally.
It's a collection of things that we have consciously and unconsciously picked up on. Yep. In the world around us. Something like beta, It took me a long time to figure out beta on my own, to remember beta, because I was a new climber.
Absolutely.
And I went from 5'10 to 5'12 really quickly, and I got stronger, but my technique wasn't great, and or relatively, like I was making it work, but that's something that over the last maybe 5 years has grown exponentially because of a lot of rock climbing, a lot of data collection about what it feels like to oppose, what things look like that fit in my body or don't, and that's something that, getting the beta, and whatever that means in the moment from somebody, getting somebody's beta can be helpful as long as we're integrating it into our actual experience, like paying attention to what data points we've collected about ourselves and the world as we know it.
I love the reframing into this is just us collecting data points.
Yeah. Yes.
And then we can go back and look at all these data points. And the more we do that, the better we get at sifting through the data points and pulling out the ones we need at the moment.
For sure. And the ones,
and the ones we don't need.
Exactly. We learn as much from what doesn't work as what does.
Yeah.
Like that's another kind of myth or misconception that I bring so much into the work that I do, whether I'm speaking or facilitating or coaching, is like, it's all important. It might not be all workable, but it's all important. Even what we find is not workable is really, really important as we kind of delineate where we're at, where we're trying to go, what we're trying to do. Okay, if I'm trying to do this data, this is what I know is not workable. The rest of it, I'm not really sure. And that's, at least from that stance, when I'm in that stance, that's that zoomed out perspective that I was talking about with clients before, of like, when I'm in the stance of like, it's all okay. It's all data. It's all important. That's when I'm the most highly functioning, the most creative. We all are. This is like basic positive psychology, neuroscience. Like we're all more engaged, more inspired, enthusiastic, creative, connected when we hold that kind of mindful stance.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to, again, since we've already sort of started out this way, bring it back to the more concrete act of rock climbing.
Yeah,
we will very often try variations on our beta and very quickly say, oh, that's not going to work for me. That's not going to work for me.
Yeah.
And then as you get better and better at that process, there are times where you're going to say, that doesn't work for me. And then 3 days later go, oh, I learned something that connects back to that thing that didn't work for me before. So maybe I need to go back to that and revisit it. And all of a sudden now it does work and it's the better way.
Sure.
And so it's so important to keep in mind that all of these really tactile skills we're learning while we're rock climbing are just these like tiny microcosms of how we interact with life in general.
Totally. Yeah. And that all of that is, to use that word again, like all of that is important. All of that is a part of the experience on the rock climb that you're trying to challenge yourself on the moment in your life that is challenging you, whatever it is, of like, well, that didn't work, to handle that conversation that way. Okay, well, now what? How do I want to be in that conversation, or how do I want to be with this rock climb? And going from there can be really helpful.
Yeah. I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and I absolutely blindsided you for this interview. We're here at the Climbers Festival, and I had a million things going on, and that the morning that I talked to you, I had a clinic with Luke Mihal. We were talking to people about cultivating creativity in their climbing life and career, and how to make creativity work for you and maybe turn it into a way to make money in this industry. And it occurred to me while we were having that clinic that I was talking about a lot of the things that I had read from you in the past. They're things that just sort of I've fallen into or cultivated myself. And what popped into my head was a phrase that I believe I first saw on your blog, which was, I've I've built a life I don't need to take vacations from.
Bingo. Yeah.
And the people around me who are living lives where they get a 2-week vacation or they have to take a break regularly are always questioning me. Like, you're working all the time, this is unhealthy. And I'm like, yeah, but a lot of these things I'm doing at work recharge my batteries. These are things I'm doing for fun. These are things I love doing. I just happen to have figured out a way to make them a part of my career and a part of my life. And so even if I go on a vacation that someone might, air quotes vacation, I'm still going to want to pull out the iPad and draw these little charts that I make, or I'm going to want to come up with ideas for a new podcast or, whatever, because I just love what I'm doing so much. And then I, happened to bump into you in the middle of a frantic moment in my day and was like, Blake, I need to talk to you.
Yeah.
So thank you for sitting down first off, kind of on short notice, and being willing to just roll with this. Like I told you earlier, I love meeting people and getting to know people through these interviews. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
But can we talk a little bit about ways to help people cultivate these lives that they don't need to take vacations from, to steal that phrase from you, and the habits that might come into building that? And first off, to start us off, am I even using that phrase in the right way? Like it popped into my head and I used it and I thought, I wonder if that's how she meant it.
Yeah, that's a good question. Thanks for clarifying. I think there are a lot of different ways. I think what comes to mind for most people first is like you're doing a job that you love and are passionate about. And that's not everybody's jam. That's not how everybody wants to be with work. And I think that's a misconception of our generation, or my generation, and probably the generation below me, that we saw our parents like in the grind, just head down, pay the mortgage, retire. And we're like, I don't want to do that. So I want to be super passionate about my job. And that's a really great option to remind ourselves of, and it doesn't work for everybody.
Sure. Life would actually be way simpler if I just had a 9-to-5 or somebody told me what to do.
In some ways, right? And
it wouldn't be as fulfilling for me.
For you, yes. And I think that's I own my own business. I've had it for 4 years. I never, before owning my own business, ever thought of myself as an entrepreneur. Like there was a lot of time at the beginning where I was like, I'm not really an entrepreneur. And at one point I was like, Blake, yes, you are. Like what a strange thing to be feeding myself that I'm not an entrepreneur when I own my own business and I'm building my own business. Like what a like, it was a very real moment of like, wow, I'm totally holding myself back from actually probably finding more peace and ease in this situation. But it's not for everybody. And comparison is the thief of joy. So when somebody sees your job and they're, or my job, like I get to do it. I lived in an RV, built my business, and traveled for 3 years. And people are like, oh my God, that's amazing. And I would always be like, 1, it has its sacrifices and ups and downs. But 2, it aligns with my values. And it doesn't mean that it's going to align with yours.
Yep.
And I think that's part of to me, the actual truth of a life that you don't need a vacation from is that it's deliberately designed to align with your needs and values, and whatever those are. And that is to say that that's a way bigger like process or question to chew on, because it means like, well, what are my values? What are my needs right now? How might those change? What do I want to do with those? And that in my experience, my understanding, working with people, that's a big part of the coaching that I do, is around like work-life balance, folks that are feeling burned out, that are often living pretty misaligned lives. And sometimes, after coaching with them for a while, they do shift jobs, but often they shift more subtle things they were doing, thinking, being, pursuing, that actually weren't aligned with their values, and they needed a vacation from all that misalignment.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of like the things we were talking about before, like that's the those are the subtleties that really take some time and peace and patience with ourselves to discern. I love that word, to really discern, like, what is my truth here, and what, like, talk about what's workable and what's not workable. So as I zoom out and look at my life, like, what feels workable, what feels not workable, and in some ways getting into the minutia. And in this moment, I'm thinking of, like, projecting. I do mostly route climbing, like projecting a route, like but you get to a point where you have to get down to the minutia. You have to get down to the micro adjustments, the micro perspective, and that's often what makes all the difference. But it takes some patience with it, and the same with our lives.
Yeah, totally. And even I think before, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but even before you get down to that minutia, one question I very often ask people, and I ask because it's a question I've asked myself repeatedly over the years, is where in the hierarchy of my values do I place this thing? It's very easy to start feeling like I have to do this, and I have to do this, and I have to do this. And whether that's in your life, your career, whether it's climbing, I want to on-site 12A, I want to send 12C, I want to flash 12B, I want to do 4511s this season, I want to do these new classic routes that just went up, I want to visit this new crag, I want to, we build all these goals that we feel like we have to do. And I'm really good at making goals for myself,
Sure.
Lots of them. And then I will have to sit down and say, what is the value of this goal for me? And if it doesn't hold enough value, I'm now pretty good at saying, okay, I'm done with that. I don't need that right now.
Yeah.
It's still there. Maybe I can pick it up again sometime.
Sure.
But these are the ones I really value. So this is where my focus is going to be.
Yeah. Goal setting is definitely a growing part of the modern generation, modern culture, in a lot of different ways, but definitely with climbing, we talk a lot about goal setting, how to set goals, and and even that awareness that you're having of, like, okay, these are these ideas that I have of goals, and then when I get honest with myself about, like, well, what's my motivation for this? Where does this fit? How could this fit? Does this fit in my life? Like, something like, I want to do a big wall. Like, okay, what do you need to move around? What do you need to add, reduce, whatever? Like, how does that fit? Does it fit? Does it fit right now? And that's kind of the honesty and the alignment that we have to, like, be pretty accountable to ourselves about. Yeah.
I love that. One of the things I watch people for all the time is the way they use their words. I love language. I love words in general. And I love that you're so quick at, when you say add, you just follow it with reduce. I love that.
Yeah.
And it strikes me how good you are at it. So,
thanks.
And it's so important, and it feels important when you do it. You know?
Yeah.
Partly because it's not add subtract. It's not just what do we need to add.
Yeah.
I love that you are good at that. Total aside there.
Yeah. I try to be like, one of my strengths is self-awareness. I'm definitely totally fucking up all the time and making mistakes, and I'm pretty self-aware, and things like that I have learned based on, the data collection of how things land with me, that when I am adding positive things and being really gentle and compassionate with myself about the stuff that, like, I could probably tone that down. That wasn't my best work. Maybe I could, like, be a little more conscious of that. There's a lot more, it's a lot more energizing. We're talking about a life you don't need a vacation from. To me, that's a lot around energizers and drains. And
exactly.
That to me is so much more energizing to hold compassion with myself about where I'm at, where I want to go, and what it might look like to get there with a little bit of softness while still being firm with, like, that was not my best work. That did not go like I wanted it to. Now what? What might I kind of, like, be more conscious of and maybe reduce a little bit in my life, in my approach to this, in my perspective right now. Yeah, it is a, I won't say like a hard won skill, but it's definitely a skill. It's something that I learned and I kept like working at, because I realized collecting data that it just felt better when I had some gentle and firm compassion with myself and with others. And that, to me, add reduce is super compassionate.
Yeah, and you used a phrase that I really like and I've been using a lot lately as I'm kind of zooming in on it for myself, and that's energize and drain.
Mm-hmm.
And I take a lot of time to think about what aspects of my work, my life, my climbing, all the things energize me or drain me. And some of those things that drain me are necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to, those stay in the rotation, but I have to understand that that's one of the things that drains me. And I can't do 4 of the things that drain me in a row effectively. I have to be able to bounce back and forth between the energizing thing, the draining thing. And the more I dig into that, the more I'm understanding little subtleties of it. You know, for instance, if I'm trying to do a Zoom interview with someone, that's draining for me. These conversations where I'm sitting across from someone, getting to know them, are energizing for me. So I could do 100 of these in a week and feel on top of the world. And I do 2 Zoom interviews and I'm done.
Totally.
You know? And I understand that. And I've also recently started thinking in terms of what parts of my existence are being drained or are being energized. And I can do a lot of creative work in all of these different aspects, but some of that creative work is draining. And I know that if I'm in here working in the house, working on, you know, a podcast idea or working on a drawing or a written piece, whatever, I'm draining myself of creativity. And then I can't go out into the gym and make up good problems.
Sure.
But I can go out there and just do the circuits that I've learned, and I can, you know, kind of push myself through. And vice versa. If I'm in here doing more busy type work, I can't go out there and do the circuits. I'm fried for that part of myself. But I can go out there and exercise some creativity and give myself room to just have fun at whatever physical state I'm in at that moment. You know?
Yeah, that's I think a crucial element of the kind of life design that we're talking about, and leading a life that we're overall energized, which leads us to be present to ourselves, present to other people. Like a lot of the things that we're all looking for, it boils down to these choices throughout the day. And so I'm wondering for you, what was that process like of feeling or knowing or determining your energizers and drains? How did you start to understand that part of yourself?
I'm a big believer in that you have to take something too far to learn where the limits are. And I definitely went too far down the road of the draining things. And very distinct memory, I've talked about it on this podcast before, lying in the floor of my truck camper in Waco tanks, mumbling to myself, I'm shutting this fucking thing down, shutting the whole fucking thing down, you know, because I was just doing too much of the things that I thought I have to do, you know? And I feel like I've, maybe by necessity, because of the way I grew up, built this way of bouncing back when I kind of hit the wall, you know? And so that I needed to hit that wall at that moment, because then I was able to turn around and look at it with a new lens and say, okay, these things are killing me, you know? And I can find someone else to do these things who likes these things, who find energy in this kind of thing where it just destroys me, you know, and these are the things I really enjoy doing. Or even if I don't enjoy them, they still energize me. Like in the moment, I might not enjoy it. I might struggle through it, but I can find the finish line and feel good afterward. And those things I kept in the rotation and just I learned the value of those things, you know? So for me, it was all about hitting the wall. And I'm sure that's not the only way. I would love to hear from you. Are there better ways of doing that? Because hitting the wall over and over is a pretty destructive thing.
Yeah. That is definitely one way. And I think I definitely have experienced that in myself in different aspects of my life, and see it with clients. I think one of the things I love most about coaching, and maybe this comes up for you too, is like you just get to see the human experience and relate to these humans all the time, and it's so cool to get to get to see it and be like, I feel you. Let's talk about it. And it's such a humbling, grounding reminder that like we're all doing our best, and sometimes we're totally messing up. But as far as determining energizers and drains, it can be, you know, hitting rock bottom or hitting the wall can be super motivating to do different, feel different. And I'm
the type of person who is like motivated by a coach who yells at me.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
I'm that type of person.
Yes,
not
okay.
everyone is.
Okay, exactly. And that's a really good kind of metaphor or image of the rock bottom coach that yells at you. Like those are elements of what energizes your motivation. Not everybody is motivated by rock bottom. Some people are overwhelmed and demoralized, and their self-efficacy, their sense of effectiveness, it is gone. Right. I think other folks that I've seen are motivated by just some area of their life that's not working that well, and so they get curious because this thing is so important to them. Like, like for climbers, like I'm climbing really poorly. Okay, what's going on with that? And so that they're motivated to get curious about this thing that they really value. And so it could be rock climbing. It could be like my relationship is a shit show. What's up with that? And that's really important to me. I want to be present to that. And so a quote that a mentor of mine uses, I think it's comes from like the Zen tradition. Everything rests on the tip of your motivation. And determining what your motivation is to like in your life or to clear out these drains or manage these drains, build more energizers, like what's your motivation in that can be a really, really important thing. Other ways to navigate that I work with clients on is just taking, in that rock bottom place, we can be kind of like zoomed in, our resources super, super low. And that can be a helpful time for a coach, but it also takes some time to like get back breathing again in a way. So if people are not yet to that place, they have a little bit more like mental, emotional, physical, spiritual resources. They have a little bit more online. And so we can just start to reflect on different areas of our lives, like in my relationship, what energizes me, and to give a little bit more like definition or context or image around energizers or being energized, it'd be like, I feel really myself. I feel really in touch with people around me. I feel really I feel really motivated, to use that word again. I feel like I'm expressing myself clearly. I think to me it has a lot to me personally, it has a lot to do with like, can I feel myself and can I feel other people? If I can't feel myself and I can't feel other people with at least like a pretty clear stance, then something is maybe misaligned. So energizers for me are the things that connect me to myself and others, versus a drain. Like I feel tired, I feel clouded, I feel like frustrated, apathy, like negative emotions are coming up. I feel disconnected from myself, like a floating head, disconnected from my body. I'm annoyed at other people, things like this. or I come out of it and I'm just like some, and you alluded to this, like some body system is really, really depleted, like mentally really tired, emotionally really tired, physically really tired. And that is another kind of aspect of taking this inventory. It's like, okay, here are the energizers, here are the drains. And then starting to reflect on, and this can be something where you're writing, but starting to reflect on like, okay, so when as I did this for myself with my business, like, as I'm doing social media marketing type stuff, like I don't prefer it. It's not something energizing to me. At that time, it wasn't. And I was like, okay, what's not energizing or what's draining about it, and what part of me is drained? And it was more mental, like lots of like tension about like I have to say the perfect thing, and so it was bringing up some emotion too. So being aware of like, say, starting with one area of your life, an area of your life that feels maybe the most misaligned, if you have the resources for that, or just an area of your life, maybe you don't have the resources to dive right in, and looking at like what makes me feel most like myself, what makes me feel least like myself, and whatever that means to you. And often with that, it can be like, I work a lot with people around like their work life, and it can be something. When I'm doing this process with clients, often what I'm asking and we're both getting really curious about is, well, what part of that is draining,
right?
Or what part of that is energizing?
Yeah,
because
you don't have to throw out the whole thing.
Exactly, and like meetings with my boss are super draining. Okay, let's talk about that. Like when you think about that experience, when you visualize that in your head, what's the part that brings the most tension? What's the part that if you were to like be able to cut and paste, you would edit out of that story? And it's like, well, what's most draining is my overwhelming fear that he's going to give me negative feedback and I'm going to be called out on it or something. It's like, okay, cool. So what's most draining is your thoughts and beliefs about it. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Let's explore that. And that can be really just, I use a lot of metaphor, and a metaphor that to me speaks a lot is when we as individuals with ourselves, or, when I'm coaching, when we can get into at least a neutral, if not kind of like a curious, which is a positive mindset, we're a lot more able to lay the cards out on the table and really just look at them. Yeah. Look at them with that curiosity, with the sense of empowerment, sense of self-efficacy that like, okay, those cards are on the table. These are my energizers. These are my drains. Okay, like letting those sit for a little bit. Like, let's see, now that I'm aware of them, let's see how that stews for a while, and then maybe changing them over time. But we often want to go from, okay, I see the quote unquote problem. I want to change it. I want to like dive in and fix it. I want to fix the energizers. I want to fix the drains. I want to just like fix it all. A quote I heard recently from Albert Einstein is, if I had 60 minutes to solve a problem, I would spend 55 minutes defining the problem and 5 minutes trying to solve it. And that's like, we don't want to do that. We just want to be like people right now are like, pause the podcast, energizers and drains. All right, get those drains fucking out of here. I'm done. And like, I hear that. I love that. We all have that capacity in us. And my, if I were coaching that person that moment, I'd be like, I hear that enthusiasm. I see that psych for feeling better and making the change. And I really love that motivation. And let's let these marinate for a little bit. Like that might be a moment where I'd be like, where I would come in with like, let's ground and see what happens. Yeah.
I'm going to make another climbing analogy here to that Einstein quote, which I think is brilliant. I see so many people who are trying a route or trying a boulder problem that will every single attempt just start from the bottom. Like, I might just do the whole thing right now. So that's what I'm going to do. Right. And I think one of the important parts about doing links and doing other sections is that it allows the challenges to show themselves that you may not anticipate. And there's no exploration of those challenges when you just start from the bottom and keep falling over and over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
because you want the success and you see this as the fastest path to the success, whatever that means.
Yeah. Yeah. I think those are some of the subtle things that like coaching and mentoring can offer us that can be really great. Like what I'm seeing is you're going for the ground, trying to red point every time. And then I see you get up there and I see you like bobbling your feet and doing different beta every time. What about this?
Something Arno
Yeah.
said to me years ago in an interview was that he views these performances as a test of sorts. And if you're not prepared to pass the test, it will show you that. And I think it's important for us to, rather than just say, oh, I want to start the test over, let me look at this section of the test that was really hard for me and explore that and learn more about that. And then I can go back and start the test over.
Totally. Yeah. What a beautiful example of compassion. Really, like the that's that kind of like firm compassion. It's not like, oh, you did like how I understand and distinguish compassion is like there's gentle compassion that's like really loving and soft and supportive, and there's firm compassion that's really challenging. And we often kind of lump them all together and think compassion is like just the gentle side, but firm compassion is also super effective. Like, okay, yeah, that wasn't my best burn. There's something missing from my approach and my level of skill and understanding of this. And it's not just like, that's okay. It's a really hard rock climb. It's also, okay, what do you want to learn from it?
I love that. You said that you provide yourself gentle compassion earlier. And when you said that phrase, I keyed in on it and was going to ask you about it. And then we just kept talking about other things, because I'm someone who gentle compassion doesn't do me much good.
Sure.
I need firm compassion.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wrote a whole book about it called The Hard Truth. And I like that, like, just punch me in my face with it, but love me at the same time.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
And
it's super loving.
that works really well for me.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think there's a lot
that
of
distinction is cool.
Yeah, and a lot of misunderstanding, I think, on both sides. You know, I think sometimes people think gentle compassion is being nice. And I really don't I don't want somebody to be nice to me.
Right.
I want somebody to be like kind and present and authentic. In the same way of like firm compassion, I think somebody can feel that as like, not bullying's a word coming up, but it's not quite bullying, but like, like, oh, I'm telling you what to do. There maybe is like a sense of judgment, but instead it's really holding somebody to their highest potential, and their highest potential is able to learn from this experience.
Yeah,
and that's really fair.
Something that comes to mind when you're talking about the differences in these things is Kyra Condé's tattoo, "You suck, try harder." That's a really positive motivator for her. And when she posted it online, she got a lot of pushback about negative self-talk. Yeah. And that's not how she interacts with it. Yeah. You know, I'm of the same ilk where I can tell myself, wow, that really fucking sucked. Yeah. Like, you just performed horribly. Right. You know, pick yourself up, get your shit together. Yeah. And I want people to tell me that. Sure. I don't want somebody to say, "Oh, good go," when it was a horrible go. Sure. I don't want somebody to say "nice work" when I half-assed it. Yeah. You know? Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Over my climbing growth, especially over the last handful of years, after a lot of what was for me negative self-talk, realizing that to me, success was when I tried as hard as I could, when I left it all on the table. And to me, that's what I love and respect most from watching other climbers. Like I get more excited and more inspired and more proud of the people around me when I just see them like burn it down in their attempt and then learn from it. And I think that's like, I can love them for trying hard, and that's the gentle. And then I think the firm is, what'd you learn? What do you take from that? What would you do differently?
that's to me, when I'm in that stance about myself or other people, it's very much like about the experience of it and about the potential. And it's a reminder that there's always data that is important.
One thing I've learned from coaching people, a wide variety of people, is that I'll often have clients like myself who very quickly key in on the things they did wrong. And I like to do that, but there is a certain depletion that happens there if you're not really careful.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've had to do with those clients and with myself that I think still counts as firm compassion is lead with what did you just do really well? What happened there that was right and that we'll keep in the next attempt?
Yeah.
Instead of the, all right, what went wrong? Because that's where they're going immediately anyway on their own.
Yeah, definitely. Again, we learn as much from what works as what doesn't work, and allowing ourselves to be present. I think what I see a lot in myself, in clients, in climbers is like, I fucked up. And it's like, you didn't reach the change without falling, or the top of the boulder, whatever. You didn't do the thing without falling. And so it's all a wash. And that's that kind of narrowed approach to things where we miss it so much. And what a beautiful perspective for us to hold as individuals and to hold for the people around us, as a reminder that there was a lot that was workable there. There was a lot that was right, that was spot on, that was aligned. And I think this goes back even to the life that you don't need a vacation from. There's a lot there that's workable.
Yeah.
And honoring that you're not a total fuck up. I just had a pretty rough conflict with a friend. I was talking with my therapist about it, and I was just like, I feel like shit. I was so bad. I just a lot of I was a lot of suffering of judgment, all these things. And she gave me the space to have that, and then she was like, well, what was okay about it? Because I wasn't ready to say if she had said what did you do well, it'd been fucking nothing. Give me some,
right.
I don't need your positivity right now.
Right.
But she was like, what didn't suck? What was okay? And I was like, well, these things, that thing, they did this, and I saw and respected that, and blah blah blah, and then we kind of just worked from there. But even being able to, that's kind of zoomed in and starting to gently zoom out is such a powerful experience that we can give to ourselves. And if we have the resources at the time, support others in. That was great. What did you learn?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm glad you said that. It literally just happened to me 2 nights ago. There were a lot of small things going wrong during the festival, and as the person out front, which happens at every festival. I'm not, it's a totally normal thing
absolutely.
To happen at a big event.
Yeah.
But
in the moment can feel like the farthest thing from the truth. This is the worst event of all time. Whatever, our mind can do all sorts of things. But yeah.
Right. And as a person who focuses on the things that could be done better, when I got home from the night, I was just like, wow, this could have gone better. This could have gone better. This sucked. I could have done better here. These people could have done better here. I really blew it at this moment. And my wife immediately, because she is a gentle compassion person, she's always upbeat and positive about everyone else's things. And she was like, well, what went well? And I'm like, I'm going to finish telling you all the fucking things that fell apart and were destroyed.
Totally.
And then we can talk about the 2 things I did well.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah,
So,
let me just wring the shit out, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, that's
totally.
needed. That's needed sometimes for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that I'm a credentialed positive psychology coach. I've studied it a lot. It's a big part of my practice, and as I talk about prioritizing positivity, which has come up in a lot of what we've been talking about so far, prioritizing positivity is not the rose-colored glasses, don't
Right.
worry, be happy.
Right.
And it can feel, we talk when we when we, I think can be some kind of like a lack of empathy sometimes when we're just like, it's okay, don't worry about it. And I don't think that your wife was doing that.
Not at all.
Exactly. And sometimes we just need to like hold it down for somebody to be pissed and then start and then hold a space for if they want to flip the spiral back around. But there can, I think, be the kind of judgment, the like good vibes only kind of thing that's not very compassionate in my experience, my perspective. Like, letting people be pissed, letting people like have their tough moment, and then if they're ready for it, to do something different with it is a really great gift that we can offer to people, and I think is something that as I coach and starting to do more kind of climbing coaching mentorship with ClimbWell, something that is a really beautiful space that we're kind of offering for people. Like here are these other ways of approaching it that maybe aren't modeled in most climbing communities.
Yeah. Before I go any further, I want to say the team at this festival was great.
Yeah.
I don't want to make it sound like all they did was blow it. There were a lot of mistakes and a lot of growth, and because of the team and the way they reacted, I feel 100% confident that it will be an even better festival next year. So not at all downing this team.
Yeah.
So
Sounds like a very growth-oriented team.
Yeah. One thing I really loved was this image, and I almost want it to be a real thing, this tangible thing that we actually do, is laying out cards on the table with all of our energizers and all of our drains, and then just sitting with those and moving them around and see how things might fit better. I love that image, and I think it's important to have some tangible things that people can do to work through these things on their own. Can we talk a little bit about habit changes and some tangible ways to reframe your habits and to create new ones or to let old ones go?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a big part of the work I've been doing. Like, I've been in kind of wellness, a lot around behavior change, health behavior change for like a dozen years now. And it's fascinating to see how we interact with our behavior and how and when habits start forming and what even is a habit.
Right.
I define habit as a behavior that was once conscious and is now on autopilot. And it can be a habit that we do very irregularly, but it's kind of an unconscious behavior. It could be something like simple things like self-care stuff, like brushing teeth or whatever. It can be habits like when how you warm up at the gym. It can be habits like I'll never forget this. I had a client that we were talking about her texting her ex, and it was like, oh, she had this habit that when she felt lonely, she responded with reaching out to exes. Like those can be habits too, and some of them can be super frustrating and draining. Some of them are seemingly innocuous. Some of them are super positive. And the structure of them is a lot to do with how we build them. So how we create a new habit and how we dismantle them. Basically, how I work with habits is that of the three parts, the behavior itself, the autopilot habitual behavior is the centerpiece. It's triggered by some sort of cue in our environment, either internally or externally, that leads us to the behavior seeking a reward, seeking some sort of, or to put it even more simply, seeking a need. So we're needing something, and it's almost like we see that need in the distance based on this cue, and then we're like, oh, well, if I do this, then I get that need met. The problem lies in the unconscious aspect of habits, and that we're just sort of like signed off from them.
Yeah.
And like a lot of what, I mean, I'd say like so much of what we've been talking about today, it is the unconscious aspect that gets us into trouble. We don't need to be analyzing everything. In fact, sometimes analysis is super unhelpful because there's like a judgment involved in that.
Yeah.
We don't have to be evaluating, but sometimes it is really, really helpful, especially when we see something that's not working, that's draining us, that's not working, that's misaligned with how we want to be. And then in those cases, especially, some radical awareness, radical honesty with ourselves can be really valuable. So that's kind of like a little bit of how I work, at least with the structure of habits and behavior, things that isn't necessarily habitual or routine. It's still every action speaks a need. And the needs can be super simple. Like when we think about needs, some of them are basic, like I eat because I'm hungry, or they can be more complex. I eat because I'm bored. But either way, there's a need there.
Yeah.
And that's another like really beautiful aspect of awareness is like, is this, it's the difference between appetite and hunger, for example. They're different needs. And in my experience personally, and again, working with people, there's very few things that when I work with a client, I'm like, I can't relate to that. So I feel
Totally.
I feel like I say that a lot, where it's like personally and professionally, this is my experience. And also from the evidence that a lot of my work is like very evidence research based, that it can be pretty hard to recognize that you have needs and that these needs are coming up in habits, and that sometimes we're right shit at meeting our needs.
Yeah.
And that's hard to acknowledge.
Yeah. I have horrible habits that I've had a hard time changing.
Totally.
And they all revolve around, there are these things I need.
Yeah.
But I let them get sidetracked one way or another by things that in the moment I feel like I need to do or need to have. And the things I actually need end up getting waylaid.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even that experience of kind of how complicated it can be. And when I say complicated, how I think of that is like there are a lot of unnecessary parts. A lot of, emotional baggage, a lot of like limiting beliefs, whatever, like it gets complicated. And so that ecosystem of complication around our habits is often what I think makes them hard to parse through, hard to lay the cards on the table. Cause we're like, I don't know, I can't feel straight. I can't think straight about this right now.
Yeah.
And so in those situations, as we're talking about habits, if we're having this emotional baggage, these limiting beliefs, this like our thinking mind is pounding really hard, that is going to be a pretty ineffective ecosystem to explore this. Like we might need to like settle things down, do things that energize us, go play, go connect. And from that space, tackle this complicated, maybe complex ecosystem of our habits. So I will say that, I'd say with anything, like our resources are super limited when we're in these when we're in like negative, emotionally weighted spaces. Like we're not going to produce a whole lot. And sometimes that's fair. That's where we are. But a reminder is to go resource yourself and then maybe tackle some of the solution finding. But
it's so easy to spiral.
Yeah, for sure.
Spiral out of that for so many reasons. I'm thinking of my own, like maybe my worst habit is that I will sit down to work on something that I really love working on, but I'll get so engrossed in it that even though I'm 10 feet from my kitchen, I don't eat for hours and hours and hours. And suddenly I realize I've been sitting here for 6 or 7 hours working on this thing and I haven't eaten. And oftentimes my wife will point it out to me, and then because I haven't eaten, I'm hangry and I'm grumpy.
Sure.
And I'm like, yeah, but I'm doing this and don't tell me,
right.
Yeah. And then I'm like, I could go out into the gym and climb and feel better about it, but now I haven't eaten and I don't have the energy to go try hard, and what I want to do out there is try hard, and that gets me more angry, and I just ruined this training day, and
Oh, yeah.
it becomes this spiraling out of control thing. And the one thing I've found that saves me in that moment is I do have a circuit of really easy, fun boulders I can go out there and do.
Yeah.
I can eat something or make a protein shake or something and go out there and do those really easy boulders. And then I'm back, and I'm not just angry at everything everyone says to me.
Sure. Yeah.
But it took me a long time to find that one little thing I can slide into the middle to break this spiral.
Yeah. Definitely. Even as you're talking about it, it's just like this spiral that kind of like pumps itself down and down and down. And then having that awareness of yourself to kind of level out the spiral, like, okay, I'm going to eat. I know something I can do that's baseline that'll start to energize me, and we start to kind of like pump up the spiral, the upward spiral, where we have more resources. We're back in our bodies, like head connected to body is a pretty profound experience for a lot of us, and something that we can lose sight of pretty easily. But for you, like with that habit, what would you say is the behavior, if you could pinpoint what the not workable part or moment is, do you think?
I think for me, it's you mean the behavior that kind of leads me into it?
The habit, quote unquote. Yeah.
The habit is, and this is interesting. I'm curious to hear what you'll say about this. It can be a really good thing, and it can be a really bad thing. And I'm not sure exactly where the trigger is that turns it from one to the other. But when I have an idea, I'm really good at sitting down and exploring that idea in all sorts of different directions, which can lead me into this rabbit hole that I can't get out of. And somewhere in there, I stop allowing myself to explore other directions, and I'm going in this one direction. Okay. And it's like tunnel visioned. Okay. And then all of a sudden, I've been there for 5 hours not eating.
Yeah. You know? Okay. So with that said, what would be the habit? Yeah. What would be the unconscious autopilot behavior that you're looking to adjust, or you did adjust? Would it be like the rabbit hole part?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's definitely the rabbit hole.
Okay.
And I'm starting to get better. Maybe 1 out of 5 times now, I can like see the darkness closing in, and I'm in this hole now, and I'm like, okay, back up.
Yeah.
You know, so I am improving at recognizing that.
Yeah. Huge.
And then reversing out of it and going a different direction, just to see what happens. Like I mentioned earlier, exploring other beta that may not work, but you have to explore it to know. Yeah. I'll very often think, oh, I'm right about this, and I'll go down that path. But now I've gotten better at branching off.
Sure.
And that helps me allow myself to either get up and make something to eat to reset my brain, or realize that I need to go out into the gym, or I need to go out and water the grass, or whatever it is that breaks this rabbit hole. Yeah. Still not good at it, but
yeah. So it sounds like there's some awareness, like it's kind of loosening the structure around the habit with that awareness. Like you're bringing some consciousness to it. You're catching it. It sounds like building some of that mind-body awareness of what it's like, what it feels like mentally, emotionally, physically, to when the blinders start coming in, which is a really a pretty visceral experience. And if we think about it, I'm sure all of us can relate to it, but we might not notice. And so the habit being blinders coming in when like an idea you're psyched on, kind of thing. Any sense of what begins to narrow those blinders? What you're thinking about, feeling, what's going on in the idea, what's going on in your body that might start to bring that narrowed focus?
It's always a moment of like, oh, I've got it now.
Like, okay.
I know what I'm doing now, and then I like tuck into that aerodynamic position and fly down the rabbit hole as fast as I can.
Certainty. Certainty's right there.
Yeah.
I'll go get it.
Exactly.
For sure. Oh, yeah.
And I actually really enjoy uncertainty. I enjoy the exploration around uncertainty. But there is something about certainty that makes me dive for it.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, we can definitely lose ourselves in the pursuit of certainty. And that is that narrowed focus. Like the pursuit of certainty is the narrowed focus where we forget that there's a world out there. There's a human body beneath this head that's like burning so hot. So with that said, it sounds like the cue is a sense of I got it. A sense of some shift in clarity that you latch onto, and it's just like, zoom. Yeah, I like that you said like the aerodynamic position. I'm going in.
Yeah.
Any sense of what the reward is when you're in that aerodynamic position, going in like hot and fast towards what you've got in that moment? What the reward, what you're getting out of that, what feels good about that?
I mean, when it feels good, when it doesn't totally spiral out of control and it actually ends up with a rewarding feeling, it's that I create a thing that then I'm ready to give to other people.
Okay.
Like I feel like I've shaped it, molded it, I'm ready to hand it to other people. And I love watching people learn from this thing that I just made.
Yeah.
Whatever that thing is.
Yeah.
That's the reward for me. I don't always have it when I think I have it.
Sure.
You know, and to bring it back to climbing, one of my longest term projects, this 13D in the Red River Gorge swing line, I tried the same beta for 70 attempts.
Yeah.
You know, and because I thought, oh, I've got it. I know how this works. Blinders on, tuck into the position, I'm going.
Yeah.
And then I watched someone else do it a different way. And my immediate response was, oh, I just can't reach that. I can't reach that foothold.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't try it for like 5 more times. And then the first time I tried it his way, when I said, okay, I'm going to step out of this fucking rabbit hole. And I tried it his way, the move was 3 V grades easier.
Yeah.
You know?
Whoa.
And I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah. What a perfect example of that. And I think we're all doing that all the time because we get so hell-bent on the pursuit of certainty, the pursuit of control,
right?
Like the pursuit of safety, whatever. And we get hell-bent on those pursuits that we kind of lose touch with. Well, how am I getting there? What is it, you know, at what cost, at what risk to the human being, to the world, whatever it is, in the pursuit of that, like that dogged reward or dogged need that we're trying to get to, which is like needs are neutral, which is the beautiful thing, and our expression of them, our pursuit of them, can be more or less workable. So your pursuit of completion of the of kind of, to me, as I you know, hear you talking about this rabbit hole with like a project, I'm seeing of just like tying it all together, like having this like full circle that makes sense, and then you can just like, and then you can put it out to the world as this full thing, this like, it's like brain baby, which is such a cool thing to put out. And in the pursuit of that, which that in of itself is neither right nor wrong, it's just important to you in that moment. In the pursuit of that, you know, when we detach from ourselves and we forget that this body is also hungry, we kind of lose track of the malleability and the flexibility, and we go into behaviors. Something that can be really, really helpful with changing a habit or adding a habit is convenience and inconvenience. Making the habit that we want, the habit that we want to build, or the behavior that we want to do, making it convenient. Like having snacks right next to you.
Right.
Setting something like that would be probably the most convenient in this situation. Something inconvenient to make the rabbit hole inconvenient would be like setting a timer, and at that timer you take a break, and then in that moment you can like break the spell and be like, oh shit, I was deep in a rabbit hole, but the spell has been broken because we have this inconvenient timer, this inconvenient reminder, or something else. Like, what is there anything coming up for you as far as that situation that would be helpful convenience or inconvenience to keep you more connected with your body in those work moments?
It's really interesting. You said the timer. Anyone who works with me can attest that I'm maybe cursed with having too many ideas to sort through all the time.
Sure.
One of the things I've done for myself, but I've only done it with apparel designs for some reason. I've never applied it to any of these other projects I work on. What I do when I have an apparel design or a logo design that I want to explore, I set a timer for 10 minutes. And I'm like, I'm going to sketch this for 10 minutes, and then that's the idea. And if I like it at that point, then another day I'll continue it. But there are 100 10-minute sketches that never went anywhere.
Right.
And then there are other 10-minute sketches that became a shirt or became a design for something. Or, but I've never done it with a podcast idea or a book idea or one of these graphic ideas that I have been putting on Instagram lately. Those things almost always, or bigger work projects. As we're talking about this, I'm realizing how many times I've lived the moment of sitting at the table across from Lana, my office manager, and I go, "What if?" And she goes, "Oh my God," because she knows what's coming, and that almost always is the very first step to going down this rabbit hole. It doesn't always end in the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But every time there's a rabbit hole, that's the first step. What if? And then I'd talk myself into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh. What does it feel like when you're talking yourself into it as opposed to exploring idea? What's the difference?
There's a lot of excitement in the talking myself into it.
Okay.
I'm exploring, I'm jumping around, I'm bouncing between ideas. I'm going, maybe this is a bad idea, but what about this? And and one of the issues is that I also know what triggers Lana to go into that place. And I know if I have an idea she's going to agree with or not.
Yeah.
And so I'll present this idea that I know will get her excited to talk about and explore and do the what ifs. And then it becomes half of our day.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah.
So I need to pay closer attention, I think, to the what if moment. And just be a little more discerning about which what ifs I allow to follow.
Yeah.
I love the having snacks near me idea. That's something we preach a lot in climbing in general is have your tools at the ready.
Yeah.
We created this crag kit and this boulder bag because I want you to be able to have your stuff packed at any moment, have your things ready.
Sure.
I don't want you to get to the crag and not have tape when you get a split. I don't want you to not have a file. I don't want you to not have clippers.
Yeah, yeah.
I want all these things at the ready at all times and for you to not have to think about it,
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, the convenience and inconvenience element as I coach around habit, that seems to be pretty people make a natural connection to that. They're like, yeah, that the things that I do it's because they're inconvenient. It's because they're convenient. Things I don't do is because they're less convenient. And being aware of, well, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to like wring out this whole idea and you really want to totally flesh out one whole idea? Okay, great. Maybe doing that a little bit more deliberately and consciously. Like I want to see every angle of this one idea, but I'm doing that consciously, and I think that can keep us a little bit more in touch with. I'm zooming in on this, but I'm also doing that on purpose. Like it's not just my brain in the unconscious pursuit of certainty or control. I really want to understand this. Like we talk about that Einstein quote. Like I really want to understand this problem.
Yeah.
I want to define it. I want to see all the angles of it. but I'm doing it with both feet on the ground and my head attached to my body.
And that works best for us with big projects.
Yeah.
And I just haven't tried to apply that to the little
sure.
smaller, medium-sized projects that I can take on by myself.
Sure.
But when it is a big project, it's, I'll do the, what if we do this big seminar and this happens? And Lana's like, yeah, that's a really good idea. Let's talk about that on Thursday.
You just sit on that. Yeah.
And then it works out best if we set aside for 2 hours, we're going to discuss this thing. And then next week for 2 hours, we're going to discuss this thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of brings to mind for me that laying the cards out on the table and then just sitting with it. One of the frameworks that I learned early on in my coaching was awareness, acceptance, action. And we really want to go awareness, action. It's so seductive to go from, I understand this enough to do things, to take action.
That's me for sure.
To go into, totally. I think all of us have that, to go into doing. I want to go into doing. I want to go into fixing. And there's often when we're in that zoomed in, like aerodynamic, like I'm going to fix this, we miss so much. To me, there's always metaphors to rock climbing. One of the reasons I love about rock climbing is it's taught me so much about myself and about the world around me. We are on the rock in the same way we are in the rest of our lives. And it's really easy to kind of zoom in and forget that, like, a mantra that somebody told me once is a mantra being like a phrase that you repeat. The mantra of and this like really playful curiosity. I mean, you just did it. Yeah. This playful curiosity that we can bring into what we perceive as a problem, or we're like, wow, I really want to fix this. I really want to control it. I really want to like tidy it all up because the messiness is annoying me. Like,
yeah.
Okay. I see that. I feel that. And just like letting it sit for a second. Yeah.
I love it. I think that's probably a really good place to say, let's do this again sometime.
Yeah, I love that.
Anybody who's listening to this conversation and who feels like you're someone that they want to work with, can relate to, you speak the language they like to hear in order to improve. How can they get involved in this next retreat?
Yeah. So tickets, we still have spots. It's a small group, 18, so it's a pretty intimate retreat size. And they can get involved by joining us in Rifle in September. We're super excited to have it in such a world-class destination. I think the idea is to kind of keep bouncing it around to these really kind of special crags and creating an experience there for people. But a little bit about the retreats there. So there are 4 days of workshops and clinics at the intersection of rock climbing, mindfulness, intentional life design, like so much of what we've been talking about here. How I talk about it, and this is, I think, different than Gabby and Remy, but ClimbWell is about navigating the complexities of being human while climbing and of climbing while being human. And that means, we're talking about high performance, like our clinics are like performance climbing, art of attention, which I did here at the festival. We're talking a lot about like mindfulness techniques on and off the rock, how to integrate life into our climbing and climbing into the rest of our lives. It's for experienced rock climbers. So besides kind of the other elements that would draw climbers, like they're at a plateau, they're trying to pass or whatever. Comfortable leading 510 is how we kind of set that up, that folks are experienced rock climbers. It's not about, this retreat in September isn't so much about teaching rock climbing, though that is a potential that we'll add in the future. And it's for folks that are super passionate about climbing and want to build their self-awareness, build their performance, and also be in a community that's doing the same thing with coaches and mentors. Which is such a valuable
thing a lot of people are missing.
Yeah.
Is this intentional community that really wants to help you succeed.
For sure. Yeah. And I think what I've noticed in our other events and retreat is that we, us three as founders and the people that come, we just do a spectacular job of creating a safe place for people to explore this stuff, to like grapple with hard questions, to grapple with their performance, to grapple with what's alive in them, and also to have fun and to support others. Like, it's very much a co-mentoring experience, because we have folks from 5'10" to 5'13" plus, and given the breadth of our workshops and the fact that there are 2 workshops and 2 clinics going on at each time, people can curate an experience based on what's coming up for them. And then we're also there to kind of coach with, well, this is where I'm at right now. What do you think would be more helpful? What might be helpful for me in this moment? And that was actually maybe one of the most fun experiences, was just this like in the moment live, what's coming up for you. Like, there was one participant, we were doing an exercise and he was like, I hate this exercise. And I was like, okay, cool. What do you want to do with that? And he was like, I kind of want to not do it, but I trust you. So I'm going to do it again and I'm going to see how that goes. And I was like, okay. And I came back and he's like, I hated it because I didn't understand it. And I did it again with that curiosity, or with that in mind of like, I don't understand this. I don't understand this. And it built some understanding. And that was really cool. And because it could have been like, cool, you don't have to do it. It's okay. We'll put you in another clinic, whatever. But us as coaches and counselors, we're really adept at like, it's all okay.
Yeah.
So now what?
Yeah. I'm also glad that you said you have 5'10" to 13 plus climbers, because I think there's a big misconception for a lot of people that once you're climbing 513 or something, you've got it all figured out, as if having stronger fingers makes you a more complete human, and it just doesn't work that way,
Yeah.
And I appreciate the holistic view that you take there. Something I tell people when they're asking about what is Power Company, if they aren't familiar, I basically just say we're trying to make better climbers, not just make you climb better.
Yeah. Yes.
There's a difference there.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
So I hope there are a lot of people listening who want to get involved in these retreats and go learn more about themselves and their motivations and how to reach the places they want to reach.
Yeah. So. We're super excited. Our last retreat sold out. It was slightly smaller by a few, but it sold out. So we're excited for another group that is ready to play and to learn and grow together. And it was no exaggeration, the most fun I've had climbing maybe ever, like doing the retreat, just because just facilitating the experience that we had curated, being with these people, like, and that's in a wealth of incredible climbing experiences in my life. It was just such a peak experience for me as a facilitator. And I know the participants went away like pretty mind blown and transformed, which was just so humbling to behold. Yeah.
I'm glad you're doing it.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, we're excited.
I love that we're focused on the same thing from different avenues, from different sides of the mountain. We're both trying to get to the same place. And I think there are a lot more coaches and practitioners out there doing the same thing, starting from a different place. And
definitely.
And I love that through this podcast, I've been able to talk to people, learn from people, connect with people, and then give the gift of what those people have to pass on to all of the listeners and to the audience. Because I never know where people are starting, That's something I've heard you say multiple times throughout this conversation that I've learned a lot about in the last 4 to 5 years, is that my experience is one thing and my experience is a true thing, but it doesn't mean the person standing next to me had the same experience, even if we were standing next to each other the whole time.
Exactly.
So I appreciate you, and I appreciate where you're coming from and
Yeah,
how
ditto.
you're getting there. So,
Yeah, ditto. Yeah, it's been really cool seeing how you've developed Power Company and like bringing in a lot of influence from other people that like you said are doing things differently and giving us all like this pretty broad holistic view of climbing and of climbing training and what it means to perform. And the metaphor for rock climbing is always really poignant, but I think a lot of it we can learn about like how do we systematize, how do we dial into whatever we're trying to do that's hard.
Yeah, awesome. Well, and last thing, it was nice to meet you.
Yeah,
through this,
you too. I know. Yeah,
this was great.
For our first conversation, I think we nailed it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks.
Like I said, this is exactly the reason I love doing this thing. These kinds of conversations, really getting to dig in and know people and really hear about their expertise. And I appreciate Blake sitting down and being willing to do that without a bunch of preparation first. For me, those conversations are just much more authentic and feel so much better for me. So I appreciate it. If the ClimbWell retreat sounds like something you might be interested in, there is one coming up soon, September 23rd to 26th. It's going to be in Rifle, and there are 18 spots available, so get in there and get your spot now. You can use the code POWER10, that's POWER all caps 10, for 10% off of your registration. They also have scholarships and half scholarships available. You can find the application for those scholarships as well as the links to learn more about ClimbWell and get signed up for the retreat right there in the show notes in your pocket supercomputer. You can also find links to Blake at Pivot Wellness as well as to her Instagrams. And while you're at it, clicking links and things, don't forget to sign up for the email for the Power Company Climbing Academy and the new courses that Nate and I are working on, so you'll be the first to know. And you can find us, as always, at powercompanyclimbing.com. You can find us at Power Company Climbing on the Instagrams, the Facebooks, the Pinterests, the YouTubes, all the social medias. And you should absolutely 100% be letting the people on Twitter know how the ClimbWell retreat goes for you. We're not going to see it though, because we don't tweet, we scream like eagles.
Maybe don't know.
This time, 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 power, this time to build power, this time to build power, this time to build power. 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 This time to
Audio.